Oh, that's cool. Wow. That's so damn cool. Hey y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. I have so much to talk about today because Grok 4 came out last night. There are a lot of details about it. I wanted to get on this bright and early. Of course, I was up late to listen to the live stream last night. It started at midnight Eastern time, so it was a little bit on the late side. And a quick thank you to everybody on X who responded. I passed my written exam for my pilot license yesterday, so that was a really big deal. I've been cramming for quite a while. Ended up getting a 92 because apparently you always have to tell everybody what you got on the test. It's not enough to just say you passed. You have to pass decently well. So anyway, thank you to everybody who posted about that. But let's talk about Grok here. And what I'm going to do is go over some of the revelations, the test results, things like that. But then I'm going to show you something that I've been working on this morning. It's only 8 o'clock in the morning at this point, so the simulation might not be perfect, but I've got a general relativity compared to Newtonian mechanics simulator running in Pygame right now with Grok. I'm still tweaking some of the things, so I'm back and forth with it. But anyway, it appears to be working decently well, and that's going to get into the intelligence of Grok because it's actually a fairly complicated thing that involves a lot of physics understanding, so you have to have knowledge about physics, as well, of course, as understanding about programming. So that's a combination that for a human being, you would have to be trained as a programmer and also as a physicist to do this in one shot, and it's very impressive that Grok is able to do this all by itself. But that gets us into what Elon Musk talked about during the live stream. He at one point said that basically Grok 4 is as smart as a PhD student in basically all areas. That's what he said. I don't know if that's absolutely true because there's an awful lot of areas that you can get a PhD in, but that was his statement, and that is very, very impressive. So anyway, let's take a look at this quick slide. We've got GPQA, which is sort of a graduate test, like basically, how well does it do compared to a graduate student? You can see Grok 4 and Grok 4 Heavy come out on top. I'm going to explain the difference between these two in just a minute. Then you've got the AMI 25, which by the way is getting fairly saturated at this point. So you've got Grok 4 03, which does almost as well as Grok 4, and then Grok 4 Heavy is literally 100%. So I mean, we've saturated this test. They need to come up with something harder, which by the way, we're going to get to the ARC 2 challenge in just a second. There's another slide for that. We've got LCB where you can see the scores are not quite as saturated at this point, but still Grok 4 Heavy is 79.4, just does a teeny bit better than Grok 4, and Grok 4 with no tools. Again, we'll get into what the differences between those are. We've got HMMT 25. I don't even know what that benchmark is, but again, you can see Grok is doing outstandingly well. You've got USA MO 25, and again, Grok is doing very well. Interestingly enough, Grok 4 does not do particularly well. It only gets a 37.5, but Grok 4 Heavy does amazingly better. So what are the differences here? Well, we've got Grok 4, we've got Grok 4 with tools, and Grok 4 Heavy. So Grok 4 on its own is a single agent mixture of experts model. It does very, very well. If you allow it to use tools like, calculators or Python code or things like that, it does substantially better. You can see here that on Humanity's Last Exam, it goes from about 28% here to over 40% just by using tools. Because, just like a human being, you can't do heavy duty calculations in your head. You need a scratch pad or a calculator or something like that, and you're going to do a lot better on difficult math questions and stuff. But anyway, Humanity's Last Exam is incredibly complicated. It asks questions that are so challenging in so many different areas that Elon Musk said the best a human being could probably do is around 5%. So it's incredibly impressive that it's getting over 40%. And then you add in Grok 4 Heavy, and with tools, Grok 4 Heavy, which is a mixture of agents, gets 50.7%. So that is incredible. It's getting over half of the Humanity's Last Exam, which is an order of magnitude better than the best human beings could do. That's getting really impressive. That's not just AGI, that's getting to artificial superintelligence. It's significantly better than human beings. So what is Grok 4 Heavy? You can see here that what it is a mixture of agents. So rather than a mixture of experts in a single model, you actually have a bunch of agents. And so what each agent does is it goes off and it thinks about the same problem, on its own. So it would be like if you were the CEO of a company and you gave a team of experts in your company, like engineers or something like that, 4 of them, you're like, each of you go off and work on this really difficult project on your own. And then we're going to come back together again in a week or two, and we will talk about your results and we'll discuss it and see which direction is the best. Which of you has the best lead on the direction to solve this problem? Now, Elon was very careful to point out that this is not just a democratic system. In other words, you don't have 5 of these things, and if 3 of them say this is the direction to go, you go that way. It's not a voting system like that. This is actually what he called like a discussion. So these agents get together after they think about the problem for a while. They discuss it between themselves and they figure out collectively which one of these directions is the best. So if there were 5 agents and only one of them had a really, really good idea for how to solve the problem, they would discuss this and go like, oh, yours is the best. We were all taking a suboptimal approach. You took the optimal approach, so we'll go with yours. So again, it's not a democratic voting thing. It's more of a conclave or a discussion about it, and then you take the best answer and you run with it. So then real quick with all of that, what is the pricing with this? Well, you can see Grok 3 is now free. I think it always has been free. For $300 a year or about $50 a month, which is my plan, you can get Grok 4. And then for $3,000 a year, you can upgrade to Super Grok Heavy. I'm having to think about that a little bit. I actually, if you don't know, my YouTube channel actually loses money with all the travel and the subscriptions and everything. It's actually a loss. I actually take a loss every year on the company. So putting in another $3,000 is a little difficult. I might have to cancel my $200 a month ChatGPT subscription and see if I can flip things around. And by the way, if you want to help with that, the best thing you can do, at least the free way to do it, is just subscribe to the channel, because the more subscribers I have, the more people that watch videos, the better the channel does, and therefore I make more money. So that's all good. So anyway, thank you for doing that if you have a moment to do that. But anyway, even without Super Grok Heavy, we're still talking about something that is very, very impressive for most uses. And then as a real quick side note, you can assign up to, I think, 3 tasks, maybe it's only 2, but you can do these daily digests. So I had it, tell me I want to summarize the most important AI and tech developments in the last 24 hours, prioritize XAI, Tesla, humanoid robotics, frontier models, companies, etc. So unfortunately, I can't change the time. It seems like it runs every day at 5 p.m. So I'm going to have to wait until 5 p.m. for the first result for this, but that'll be really cool because it'll just show up in my inbox and I will have a kind of a digest of things, which will be very helpful, not only for me to learn things and know about stuff, but also for YouTube and X, where I can actually post videos that stay up to date with things, because sometimes the difficulty is just finding what new stuff is coming out. And then finally, even though they didn't discuss it last night, I went and found that Grok 4 is actually available via an API. In other words, you're able to access it via code instead of just in a chat window. It actually gives you double the amount of context window. So basic Grok 4 is only 128,000 tokens, which is a pretty small context window, honestly. Elon said you can dump in your entire code base into Grok and have it fix it and everything, but most people's code base is a lot more than 128,000 tokens for a full-on developmental situation. So I'm not sure how useful that would be. 256 starts getting up into a reasonable range. So that's really, really cool. Anyway, down here, you can see that the cost per million tokens is actually the same between Grok 3 and Grok 4. So that's really cool that they kept the price down that far. That means it's very inexpensive to run Grok 4, relatively speaking. Again, you get a context window. There are rate limits. You're only allowed to get 16,000 tokens per minute out. And the really big problem is you can only do 60 requests per minute. So that on an enterprise scale is going to keep Grok 4 from being able to be utilized, by a large corporation that wants to have a lot of people utilizing Grok at the same time. Now, again, for most purposes, Grok 3 is probably perfectly fine, and you get 600 requests per minute for Grok 3. So my guess would be if you were doing something at large scale, corporate-wise, what you would do is default to Grok, and then if the question or request or whatever came in and it was too complicated for Grok 3 to do a good job, you would shift the model over to Grok 4 so that you wouldn't overuse that model. So anyway, just note you get double the context window, which is really great, but you only get 16,000 tokens per minute of generation and only 60 requests per minute. But still really cool to see that Grok 4 is available via the API from day one. So that's fantastic work. So before I get to the simulation, which I'm saving for last, and by the way, it works now, so that's super cool. I had to go back and forth about 4 or 5 times to get it to work just right, but it is super cool to see the simulation work now. So I'm very excited. I'll show you that in just a minute. But a few things that were discussed during the live stream. Number one, Elon said that it is smarter than all human beings at this point, all individual human beings, and it's probably true if it's doing as well as it is on humanity's last exam. It's just very, very impressive. Secondly, and this is super important, and this flows right into my thinking about intelligence and everything, is that Grok will have a body. Elon said that. It's going to need Optimus to be grounded in reality. That must have made Jan LeCun very, very happy, because he keeps advocating for needing a body to have actual general intelligence. And I agree with that. One of the reasons why AI in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, et cetera, were really, really good at game playing and things like that, but couldn't even do basic basic things like stand up and stuff is because they didn't have enough interaction with reality. Reality tells you what you can do and what you can't do very, very effectively. If you fall over, you know you didn't stand up right. So Elon said interaction with the physical world is necessary. And again, they're really trying to build Grok out to be an agent that understands the world from the ground up. And in order to do that, you really do have to be embodied. You have to understand embodiment. So I think that's really critical, and it was really good to hear. And if you haven't caught my video about Optimus's delays, you can check that out up here. I'll leave it at the end of the video as well. But I think that this delay could actually be of benefit because it will allow a little tighter integration between Grok and Optimus. And I think that will be very, very beneficial and a big differentiator for both Tesla and for xAI. So we already discussed multiple agents and tool use, but what Elon said about tool use is that Grok 4's tool use is significantly better than Grok 3 because it was trained with tool use in mind, but the tools are still relatively primitive. It doesn't have access to high-end finite analysis tools and things like that. It has more basic tools, and Elon said when you get the higher-end tools by the end of the year, he was saying, then it will be able to do outstanding work because it will have access to better tools like the best human engineering companies have. And then as far as Arc AGI is concerned, Grok 4 is actually 4 times as successful at Arc AGI Challenge 2, not number 1. 1 is basically saturated at this point, but the second challenge that they've created, Grok is actually 4 times as good as the other models out there, the best other models, but that still puts it at like 16%. So it's still kind of pathetic in terms of its overall capabilities, but with a test like this that's new and other models are only getting single-digit percentage of success on that model, to get 16% is really, really impressive. So that may be the most impressive statistic from the live stream. So with that said, let's look at the Newtonian versus general relativity gravity simulator. Let's go ahead and start it. And here we go. We should see a difference. Okay, so the red one is general relativity. The green one is Newtonian. And look at that, you can see. And we're getting a sort of geodesic sort of understanding of the terrain of the general relativity simulation. The Newtonian one is, as you see, just Newtonian mechanics. So it's using the GMM over R squared, relatively straightforward. And you can see how the two of them with a very, very heavy mass in the middle, it's 5 million solar masses basically. So that's a pretty massive sun in the middle. But you can see that they become very, very different over time. And this shows you the effect of general relativity versus Newtonian mechanics. If you start them in a more distant orbit where things are relatively calm, there's very, very little difference. I ran the simulation and it's not interesting. But as you have a heavy object and you push them near the object, you can see that these two things become very, very different. So this is incredibly complicated math and everything. I could see it while I was looking at Christoffel symbols and stuff like that. And I did do a general relativity class, but it was decades ago, so I'm really rusty, but I remember Christoffel symbols and tensors and all of that kind of stuff. So this is gnarly stuff to understand, and then to actually do the computations and do it in real time. This is very, very impressive stuff. So I have to give Grok major cred. This was really cool, by the way, that I saw that this kind of looped in and then came out. So we're getting a really interesting pre-session and everything. You can see that the Newtonian mechanics solution has come to a very stable solution, but that the general relativity one is chaotic. So we've actually created kind of a strange attractor, it looks like, for general relativity. So really, really cool to see this. So I'm very pumped about this. I think that is super cool. Alrighty, with that, I'm going to leave you all. I've got to take Misinformation to physical therapy for her knee surgery. Thank you for the kind thoughts about her as well. If you enjoyed this video, please do like it. And like I said, if you don't mind subscribing, it would really, really help out the channel. It would help me make more money so I can get subscriptions, so I can show you Super Grok Heavy and other things like that. That would be fantastic. In the meantime, I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.